There is a paradox at the heart of espionage. The more deeply a nation delves into secrets, the more it risks losing itself in the shadows. Espionage is a game of mirrors, where one's reflection is distorted, and trust is both a weapon and a vulnerability. In the midst of this covert world, the KGB and CIA waged their silent war, crafting stories not just of national security, but of personal identity. Imagine being a trusted servant of your country, sworn to uphold its values, only to find that your loyalty may be betrayed, not by an enemy, but by your own heart. In the world of espionage, there is no simple truth. There are only secrets, half-truths, and the desperate hope that the lies we tell ourselves will protect us. The story of the KGB's infiltration into the CIA is not just about intelligence or national security. It is about the collapse of certainty, the breakdown of moral boundaries, and the relentless pursuit of power through manipulation and deception. Espionage at its core is not merely a battle for secrets. It is a battle for perception, control, and power. The KGB's espionage campaign against the United States was a struggle to redefine reality itself. The CIA's role in this silent war was not just to uncover secrets, but to maintain a facade. The belief that they were always one step ahead of their Soviet adversaries. However, beneath this surface of national pride and heroism lies a darker truth. In the realm of espionage, the KGB was far more than a tool of the Soviet regime. It was a force that shaped the very nature of the Cold War. Its agents were not mere spies, but architects of an invisible war, where the weapons were secrets, and the casualties were trust and personal integrity. The United States, in its pursuit to defeat communism, created an intelligence system built on the premise of secrecy. But secrecy, as it turns out, is a double-edged sword. It protects, but it also isolates, creating a world where the lines between right and wrong blur. For decades, the KGB's agents wove their webs of deception, infiltrating not just the U.S. government, but the very hearts of the individuals who worked within it. The CIA's greatest fear was never just the KGB's espionage, it was the growing suspicion that one of their own might be betraying them. The allure of espionage, after all, is not in the ideals it promises, but in the power it grants. The ability to control the flow of information, to shape the narrative, is a seductive force that has driven men and women to betray everything they once held dear. Take, for example, the story of Aldrich Ames, one of the most infamous double agents in U.S. history. Ames was a CIA officer who, over a period of years, passed classified information to the Soviet Union. His betrayal resulted in the deaths of numerous CIA assets and the exposure of America's most sensitive operations. But Ames was not motivated by greed alone. His actions were driven by a disillusionment with his country, a sense that the ideals he was serving were not aligned with his own understanding of the world. For Ames, espionage became more than just a job. It was a form of self-definition, a way to reshape his own narrative. The KGB understood this better than anyone. To infiltrate the CIA was not just to steal secrets, it was to change the very nature of the game. By turning CIA officers into double agents, the KGB didn't just gain access to classified information, they also altered the perception of what was possible within the world of espionage. Each successful infiltration shattered the illusion of security that the U.S. had carefully constructed. For the CIA, every new betrayal was a crack in the foundation, a reminder that the line between loyalty and betrayal was not as clear-cut as they had once believed. Espionage operates in a realm beyond the battlefield. It is a war fought in the shadows, where the weapons are whispers and the casualties are invisible. The KGB's success was not merely in its ability to gather intelligence, but in its ability to manipulate the very systems of trust and loyalty that held the U.S. intelligence community together. Through its spies, the KGB waged a war not only for information, but for the very essence of human trust. The question was no longer just about what secrets the Soviets could uncover. It was about whether the U.S. could trust its own. Reflection: the human cost of espionage. Espionage, in its darkest form, is not just about manipulating governments or gathering information. It is about the manipulation of individuals. The KGB, as an institution, did not just infiltrate the CIA, it infiltrated the very identities of the agents working within it. The individuals who became double agents were not merely traitors, They were people who had, in one way or another, lost their way. The personal and political motives for espionage are as varied as the individuals who engage in it. Yet, there is one underlying truth. To betray your country is to betray yourself. And once that line is crossed, the world is never the same. At the heart of every espionage story is a personal journey. A journey marked by the struggle between loyalty and self-interest, between duty and disillusionment. For those who became spies, the choice to betray was never simple. It was always a calculated decision, weighed against the benefits of self-preservation or financial gain. The personal sacrifices made in the name of espionage are profound, and the consequences of betrayal are far-reaching. The CIA's agents who turned on their country did so not just for money or ideology, but because they had come to question the very system they were serving. The psychological toll of espionage is devastating. It requires the agent to live in a constant state of duality, to embody two conflicting identities. There is the outward persona, the dedicated patriot, the loyal servant. And then there is the hidden truth, the secret life of deception. For the double agent, these two identities can never truly coexist. One will inevitably destroy the other. The price of espionage is not just the loss of one's job or freedom, but the loss of one's identity. To betray your country is to betray yourself. The consequences are irreversible. The deadly game of espionage teaches us a profound lesson. The more we seek control, the more we risk losing ourselves. The KGB and CIA were engaged in a battle for power, but what they truly fought for was the control of truth itself. In the world of espionage, truth is never absolute. It is always shaped by those who control it. The KGB's success was not simply in gathering intelligence. It was in shaping the very reality that the CIA, and by extension, the United States, believed in. Espionage forces us to confront the fragility of truth. In the world of spies, truth is malleable, distorted by the whims of those who hold the power to define it. The CIA's reliance on secrecy was both a shield and a prison, protecting the country while isolating it from the real consequences of its actions. And in the shadows, the KGB understood this better than anyone. They knew that the key to victory was not just in stealing secrets, but in changing the narrative, in rewriting the story of reality itself. As we reflect on the history of espionage, we must ask ourselves, what price are we willing to pay to control the truth? The KGB and CIA may have fought a war of shadows, but in doing so, they also fought a war of perception, a war that continues in every corner of the world today. In an age where information is power, the lessons of espionage remain as relevant as ever. The price of espionage isn't paid only by the agents who betray their countries, but also by the nations that deploy them and the societies that are forced to live in the wake of their actions. When Aldrich Ames, a CIA officer, turned his back on his country, the damage wasn't limited to the information he passed to the Soviet Union. Ames wasn't just a traitor. He was a symbol of a broken system. A system that believed it could safeguard the truth by shrouding it in secrecy, without realizing that secrecy itself breeds suspicion, confusion, and eventual collapse. For decades, the CIA had prided itself on its ability to protect the nation's most sensitive intelligence. But Ames' betrayal shattered this illusion. As the KGB gained access to the CIA's most guarded secrets, it became apparent that even the most trusted officers could be turned against their own nation. Each revelation of betrayal was a blow to the CIA's credibility, but more than that, it was a profound personal loss. Ames' actions represented more than just a lapse in security. They represented the failure of a moral framework. In espionage, the divide between right and wrong is often blurred. Spies are trained to live double lives, to tell lies that serve the greater good. But the human cost is immeasurable. Ames was not just betraying the United States. He was betraying his own moral compass. His disillusionment with his country may have been a catalyst for his actions, but his decision to betray wasn't just about politics or ideology. It was about self-preservation. Ames, like so many others who walk the tightrope between loyalty and betrayal, chose his own survival over the ideals that had once guided him. He chose a new story, one that placed him in the center, above the ideals he had once sworn to defend. But Ames' story was not just one of greed or personal gain. His was a story of profound disillusionment, a feeling many can relate to, even if they haven't betrayed their country. In the world of espionage, betrayal is often the result of a deep internal conflict, a struggle between identity and ideology. When a person's identity is at odds with their beliefs, when they no longer recognize the world around them, betrayal becomes a way to rewrite their story. For Ames, the act of espionage became a way to reclaim control over a life that had spiraled out of his grasp. Ames' betrayal exposed a brutal reality. In the world of espionage, the most dangerous enemies aren't always those outside your walls, but those within. The KGB's ability to infiltrate the CIA was not just a triumph of intelligence. It was a testament to how easily human beings can be manipulated when they feel alienated or betrayed by their own systems. The betrayal of a nation is not an isolated event. It's a process, one that unfolds slowly, often beginning with small fractures in personal beliefs, and eventually culminating in actions that can never be undone. Espionage, at its heart, is about much more than national security. It is about identity, about the stories we tell ourselves and the narratives we choose to follow. And it is in this space, where the personal and the political collide, that espionage becomes a tragedy, not just for nations, but for the individuals involved. The KGB's relentless pursuit of CIA secrets was not just a game of espionage. It was a psychological battle, one that exploited human vulnerabilities. The agents it turned weren't simply pawns in a larger geopolitical struggle. They were individuals caught in a web of conflicting desires, loyalty to their country, personal ambition, and, in many cases, a deep sense of dissatisfaction with the systems they had sworn to serve. The KGB understood this vulnerability and exploited it with chilling precision. But how much of this is human nature? How much of the espionage story is about the individual's struggle to reconcile their loyalty to a nation with their own personal beliefs? We often talk about loyalty as if it's a simple matter of allegiance, but in truth, loyalty is a complex, fragile bond. It is shaped by personal experiences, disappointments, and desires. Betrayal doesn't just break political allegiances, it shatters identities. It forces individuals to confront who they really are and what they truly believe. In the case of spies like Ames, the act of betrayal became a way to reclaim agency over their lives, to rewrite their own personal narratives in the face of a larger, more powerful system. But espionage also reveals something deeper, the complexity of human nature. At what point does the ego, driven by personal desires, override the greater good? The act of espionage is driven not just by ideology, but by the need for self-validation, the desire to feel important, to feel valued in a world that may seem indifferent. It is a dark mirror to the human condition, where personal ambition, fear, and disillusionment collide, leading to actions that defy the values one once held dear. In this light, the story of espionage is not just about national security, but about the loss of innocence, the erosion of trust, and the inevitable shift from the clarity of truth to the murkiness of lies. When truth is weaponized, when loyalty becomes a currency to be traded, we are reminded that in the shadows, the lines between right and wrong are never as clear as we like to believe. Espionage forces us to confront a paradox. The more we seek to control information, the more we lose control of ourselves. The KGB's manipulation of CIA agents was a deliberate strategy to create chaos and mistrust. By infiltrating the highest levels of the CIA, the Soviets didn't just gain access to critical information, they also disrupted the very foundations of trust upon which the American intelligence community was built. In the modern world, this lesson remains as relevant as ever. Information is power, but it is also a double-edged sword. The more we cling to control over information, the more we risk losing our own integrity. Espionage teaches us that secrecy, when it becomes all-encompassing, not only creates divisions between nations, but within the very souls of those who operate in the shadows. The agents who betrayed their nations were not just violating their oaths, they were violating their own sense of self. The KGB, for all its cunning, knew this better than anyone. They understood that to defeat the CIA wasn't just to steal secrets, but to manipulate the very individuals who held those secrets. As we reflect on the story of espionage during the Cold War, we must ask ourselves, what do we sacrifice in the pursuit of control? The story of the KGB's infiltration into the CIA is a tale not just of national security, but of the fragility of human trust, the complexities of personal identity, and the consequences of betrayal. Espionage, in its purest form, asks us to confront uncomfortable truths about power, trust, and human nature. And in doing so, it offers us a profound insight. The greatest secret isn't what is hidden behind locked doors or encrypted files. It is the truth we conceal from ourselves. For in the shadows of secrecy, we are all vulnerable to the temptation of betrayal. Espionage, as the Cold War taught us, is a far-reaching, invisible force, one that affects not only governments but the individuals who serve them. When we consider the legacy of the KGB's actions within the CIA, it becomes clear that the war waged by both agencies was not just a struggle for political power, but for control over the human mind. Espionage is about shaping reality, about rewriting the story of a nation and its people. To infiltrate a government is to alter its fundamental structure, to erode trust and create a sense of constant suspicion. It is a subtle yet devastating form of warfare that operates in the shadows, far from the battlefield but with consequences that ripple through every corner of society. The KGB's manipulation of CIA officers, turning them into double agents, was not a random event. It was part of a larger strategy to undermine the American intelligence system from within, causing it to crumble under the weight of its own paranoia. The CIA's reaction to these betrayals was swift, but it came too late. By the time Ames, Walker, and others were exposed, the damage was done. The CIA had been irrevocably compromised. What had once been a trusted institution, built on the idea of defending the country from external threats, had become vulnerable to internal decay. The KGB's success in this regard was a testament to the skill with which they manipulated not only individuals, but entire systems. Yet espionage is not merely about the theft of secrets. It is about the manipulation of perception, the creation of fear and distrust. The KGB understood that to weaken a nation, one need not destroy it with bombs or missiles. Instead, one can plant the seeds of doubt, forcing its leaders and citizens to question the loyalty of those around them. The more the CIA discovered Soviet spies within its ranks, the more its agents began to distrust each other. Trust, the very foundation of any successful intelligence agency, was shattered. For the KGB, espionage was not just a strategic maneuver, it was an art form. They carefully selected their targets, choosing not just individuals, but vulnerabilities. Aldrich Ames was not just a CIA officer who happened to be susceptible to bribery or ideology. He was someone who had already been disillusioned by the system he served. The KGB did not merely look for weaknesses in the American government. They looked for weaknesses in the hearts of its people. Ames, like many others, was caught in a moral crossfire. The identity he had worked to build as a loyal CIA officer crumbled under the weight of personal doubts. In his eyes, the Soviet Union represented a certain form of clarity, a world that made more sense than the one he saw around him. Espionage, despite its cloak of secrecy and its focus on national security, is ultimately a deeply human story. It's a story about the battle for personal identity, for self-definition, and for control over the narrative we live by. The agents who betrayed their countries were not simply traitors. They were individuals who found themselves at a crossroads, torn between conflicting desires, ideologies, and moral compasses. The human cost of espionage is not just measured in lost secrets or lives. It is measured in the erosion of self. To betray one's country is not only a political act, but a profound personal one. It forces an individual to confront the deepest parts of their psyche, their motivations, their beliefs, and their understanding of truth. In Ames' case, his betrayal was not simply the result of greed or ideology. It was the product of a larger internal conflict. Ames had lost faith in the very ideals he had once sworn to defend. His betrayal became a way to reshape his own identity, to redefine his place in a world that seemed increasingly incomprehensible. The act of espionage strips away the boundaries between loyalty and disillusionment, between duty and self-interest. In the shadowy world of spies, where nothing is as it seems, even the most trusted agents can become the most dangerous traitors. Espionage operates in a realm of moral ambiguity, where the line between right and wrong. As the story of espionage between the KGB and the CIA unfolds, it becomes a powerful reflection on more than just covert operations or geopolitical struggles. It serves as a meditation on the most human of experiences, the tension between loyalty and self-identity. Betrayal is not simply an act of treason against a country, but a profound personal choice, one that forces the betrayer to confront their deepest fears, desires, and contradictions. To betray one's country is not only to turn against an institution, but to challenge the very essence of who you are. At the core of espionage lies the question of truth. What is real and what is fabricated? Not just in the world of spies, but within ourselves. The agents who turned against their nations, such as Aldrich Ames or Kim Philby, were not merely pawns in a geopolitical game. They were human beings navigating the labyrinth of self-doubt, disillusionment, and moral decay. Espionage, at its most personal, becomes a quest to rewrite one's own narrative, to reclaim control in a world where truth is constantly being manipulated, where the lines between loyalty and betrayal blur. And therein lies the paradox. The pursuit of control over information, power, or even one's own identity often leads to a loss of control. The more we manipulate the truth, the more we risk losing sight of it entirely. The KGB, through its clever infiltration of the CIA, didn't just steal secrets. It cracked open the illusion of certainty. What was once a carefully constructed world of trust and duty became a fragile house of cards, susceptible to the weight of personal betrayal. Each act of espionage wasn't just a betrayal of nations, but a reflection of the fragility of human integrity. As we stand in the shadow of this history, we realize that the true cost of espionage is not only the loss of secrets, but the erosion of trust, both in others and in ourselves. The greatest spies are not those who manipulate the world around them, but those who preserve their integrity even in the face of immense pressure. It is easy to betray others, but far harder to remain true to the self when the world demands you conform, deceive, and break your own moral code. In the end, espionage reveals a simple truth. The greatest power isn't found in controlling information, nor is it in outsmarting an adversary. The greatest power is the ability to remain true to who we are, regardless of the temptations to betray ourselves for the sake of personal gain or survival. The KGB may have succeeded in undermining the CIA's trust, but the agents who remained loyal to their nation, their values, and their identity ultimately held the truest victory. For in espionage, as in life, the most dangerous betrayal is not against governments or allies, but against ourselves. The true enemy is not always the one we see in front of us, but the one we see when we look in the mirror and wonder who we truly are. And perhaps that is the most powerful lesson. When we stop seeking to control the truth and start living by it, we become free. Free from the shadows, free from the lies, and free from the greatest espionage of all, the betrayal of the self.